I am calling to order the meeting of the Federal Way School Board, and with us this evening we have Director Barney, Director Wilson, Director Peterson is on his way here, and Director Moore will not be joining us this evening, and I'm Director Griffin. If I can have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and presentation of colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Carry. May be seated. Okay, the chair will look for an approval of the agenda.
Madam Vice President, I move that the agenda for February 26, 2013 be approved as submitted.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Looking for an approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Vice President, I move for approval of the consent agenda for February 26, 2013 as submitted.
I second that motion.
Being moved and seconded, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. It is moved. And we will move into student recognition with Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson.
Thank you, Vice President Griffin. Members of the board, Mr. New. Tonight we have wrestlers from 3 different schools to introduce to you and congratulate for their efforts this year and this past season that just recently ended. And with that, I think we'll start at this point with Jerry Peterson, Athletic Director from Todd Beamer High School, Mr. Randy Kazar, Principal, Todd Beamer High School. Thank you.
Good evening. This is a special night to recognize a student athlete that had an outstanding season, winning a state championship. Before I do that, I just want to highlight we had a couple other big happenings for Beamer. Both our boys and girls basketball teams made it to the round of 16 in the state tournament. First time it's happened in school history. I'm really proud of our team and both teams, and looking forward to the future. And we had a couple firsts this year. We had enough girl wrestlers to recognize having girls team. We hired a head girls coach, and I'd like to introduce our head coach, Michael Markey, and he's going to introduce our first girls state champion in wrestling, Michael Markey.
All right, hello. Nice to see all you here. Well, the young athlete from Beamer that we want to recognize, last year she took second in the state for girls wrestling, which is quite awesome. In this season, she went undefeated with a record of 23-0, and she won the state title. So that's pretty impressive. She's only a sophomore. Her GPA, I believe, is still a 4.0. So she couldn't be an academic state champ this year, but next year we look forward to having her as the academic state champ as well as the wrestling state champ again. So let's give it up for Arian Carpio, please.
Next we have from Federal Way High School, we have, and I'm not certain of this order, so I'm just going to go with it, folks. We have Athletic Director Miguel Perez, Principal Lisa Griebel from Federal Way High School, and Coach Travis Mango to introduce a Federal Way wrestler. Thank you.
Hi. So tonight we're going to be recognizing Poe Logo from Federal Way High School. Poe is a model student athlete at Federal Way High School. She does so in a number of ways, but primarily in the way that she recognizes the importance of maintaining good grades, as well as being I'm sorry, I don't do well with this. Maintaining good grades and being an active member in her school community. She does so by taking advanced courses throughout the year, as well as being an active member in the Pacific Islander Club and being on the varsity volleyball squad as well. This is my second year as Poe's wrestling coach, and during this time she's accumulated a career record of 50 wins and 14 losses with 46 career pins. Last year as a rookie, she placed 8th in the state, and this year, obviously, she was our first state champion in women's champion in girls' history. The cool thing is, because of her accomplishments, not only on the mat, but in the classroom, she's being recruited by a number of schools right now to pursue a college degree next year and wrestle at the college level. And as her coach and mentor, I cannot be more proud of her.
Thank you. Next we have from Decatur, Rex Tucker, Assistant Principal, and Coach Mike Bressler.
Well, I get the privilege to introduce an entire team, Decatur's wrestling team. First of all, I just want to say this is just a tremendous group of boys. Their determination was just unbelievable this season, and actually for the last 4 years, many of them. They were 4 points away from winning the state title. They placed second in the 3A state championships. But I want you to understand that there's over 300 matches, individual matches wrestled in the 3A state tournament. That boils down to one match. That's how close it was. So just an outstanding group of boys, and their integrity was tremendous. They did what they had to do in the classroom. They took care of business. They're model citizens around the community, which is what we want. We call it the Gator Way. And I'll tell you what, they worked their tail off. And to place second, to my knowledge, and I'm 99.5% positive, this is the highest finish of any wrestling team in Federal Way history. So I'm going to introduce them briefly. I just want them to stand, and boys, after we all stand up, we'll come on up here for the picture. First off, I'll start off with freshman Leviticus Arispe. He was the regional champion, and he took 3rd place in the state tournament this year. Next up, Isaiah Diggs, sophomore. He was 1st in the SPSL, 1st in the region, and 3rd at the state tournament. Senior, Roland Gaydosh. He was 1st in the SPSL, 2nd in the regional tournament, and 3rd in the state tournament. Roland's a 2-time state placer. He placed 2nd last year. Christian Aragon. This is only a 2nd-year wrestler here, and he placed 3rd in the SPSL, 2nd in the region, won a match at the state tournament. Next up is Brandon Zimmerman. Brandon is a junior. He placed 3rd in this district. He placed 3rd in the region and 7th in the state tournament. Nick Karras. Nick Karras is a 3-time state placer. This year, he was first in the SPSL, first in the region, and third in the state. Spencer Smith. Spencer Smith is a two-time state placer as well. He placed second in the SPSL, second in the region, and third in state. I think I've got everybody except one. And the last one I'd like to introduce is Kyle Gleed. Kyle Gleed was our state champion at 285 pounds this year.
Let's have Kyle come up here, please.
Kyle, come on. Should I
Absolutely. Thanks. Thank you. And I have just one little brag here. I'm proud to say that I think, Mike, when you were starting your teaching career, your first opportunity to work in Federal Way was at Kylo. I was brilliant enough to see that. So it wasn't very difficult either. So thank you, Mike. And next we have, I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Hall from Thomas Jefferson, and I believe Principal Liz Drake is here as well. Liz, thank you. Are you coming up too? Thanks, Stephen. Good to see you. Thank you. All right, it's all yours.
All right, good evening, Superintendent New, Board, and distinguished guests. My name is Stephen Hall. I'm a teacher at Thomas Jefferson High School. I'm here today to introduce and present the Thomas Jefferson History B and Bowl team and recognize their accomplishments. The History Bowl in B is a nationally organized competition that can cover nearly anything in history. Anything. And I've seen questions that prompted an answer of AC/DC and wondered how they knew the answer. As well as I've heard answers about 17th century military leaders in Southeast Asia that I've never even heard of. In the History Bowl, it's a competition comprised of two 4-player teams competing against each other. The game is played simply with the question read. The first to buzz in with the correct answer earns their team points. Now, it's easy for us to sit at home and watch Jeopardy and get a few questions right, especially when it's teen and children's Jeopardy. But the pressure of listening for the answer while buzzing in a timely fashion creates an extremely intense atmosphere that even I can't imagine at times. Now, after winning the regional competition in November, Paul Jaquish, Hannah Moore, Anna Metcalf, and Julie Huber, as well as Catherine Dyer, won the state competition at Klahawa High School. If that were not enough, Paul Jaquish competed in the individual event of the competition called the History B. Paul was able to sweep the state competition in the B, leaving his opponent speechless at times. I want to take a moment to share exactly what that meant for Paul with his performance. Now, in every game, there's 26 toss-up questions, which any of the 8 students can ring in and attempt to answer. He averaged, mind you, getting 12 answers right, not ringing in, 12 right per match. That's about 50% of the correct answers. The final competition, the finals, he turned in his best performance in the final round with 16 correct answers, hitting 60%. Now, that is absolutely incredible. To put this into context, next time while you watch Jeopardy, keep the percentage of answers you get correct. just to see what you get. And what's also impressive is we did this in 8 hours. So watch about 4 to 8 episodes in a row and see how your brain starts working. We'll be heading to Washington, D.C. in April, and we're planning on having an extremely strong performance at Nationals. Hannah Moore, she's been my president of the organization, and when I say that, I'm a very busy teacher working in the IB program, helping out in the district as many different ways as I can. When it comes to running the team, I'm a lot of times I'm the driver, or I'm just the helper. She is the leader of the team. And I also want to pause for a second. I have a mom in the audience. This is our team mom with snacks and rides as well. And she's a founding member. We've only been a team for 3 years. We started, and I'd like for her to share a few words about it.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, and thank you, members of the board, for inviting us to come and recognizing us this evening. We very much appreciate it. So I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Thomas Jefferson History Bowl team, and so I'll just jump into it. At the beginning of my sophomore year, I became more enamored than I ever have been before with history, and so much so that Mr. Hall asked me to be a part of his History Bowl team. I don't think I could have answered any quicker with the yes, please. So I was pumped. And then he went on to explain it's kind of like Jeopardy, only with the team, all right? But then he went on to explain that it was all upperclassmen and we only had a week to prepare. All right, then. So since that first regional competition that I attended in my prized duck sweater, I have been hooked on the feeling of adrenaline, excitement, and pride that comes with every match. The team has come an unbelievably long way since that first competition, with an amazingly diverse group of people, all with different interests and specialties. As president, I would like to think that I had a part in this change, but the success is largely shared by everyone who puts on the uniform and puts all of their knowledge on the table. I'm so fortunate to have found a niche for my passion to thrive and grow. I'm inspired by my teammates and our coach, Mr. Hall, who inspired me to believe in myself and my ability to find a career that fed my passion for history, but also inspired us all to succeed in terms of this competition. We look forward to going into nationals with a state win on our books, but are humbled by the opportunity that everyone has worked so hard to achieve. Thank you for your time, and look for us making history at nationals.
Thank you. Did you get pictures out? Thank you. All right. Sorry, no. Thank you. As a history major and a former history teacher, that's very cool. I'm going to have to check out the competition. Thank you.
Okay, next we will have Shaun Simpson presenting the We Day update.
Good evening, Superintendent New, Deputy Superintendent Davidson, Board of Directors, community members, and distinguished guests. My name is Shaun Simpson. I am one of 4 members of a WE team at the district office, and I have the privilege of working with 10 executive high school council members on the We Act, We Day initiative for our school district. And to give you an update, good evening, Director Peterson. To give you an update on We Day and We Act, exciting news. Just recently, this afternoon, a few hours ago, I got confirmation from Free the Children, and we have 12 schools plus 2 clubs that have already secured 30 tickets per each of those school and clubs, which is very exciting, which is a total of 420 tickets. We have 5 schools that are still in process right now of getting that confirmation, so I'm very excited about that. And today I am really privileged to share with you 2 of our executive high school We Day directors, which are Jordan Crahan and Christina Kim, who are going to share with you a little bit of information about what's new, what's going on in terms of our work at the district level. And one quote just to start us off from a student from the Career Academy, Din Chu. He has really been impacted by this work, and he shares with us that one student, a raindrop amongst a great shower of hope. And I know that the organization of Free the Children, in partnership with schools across Canada and schools across the United States, is what they're trying to do is to instill hope in children, teenagers, helping children and teenagers get out of poverty and have access to high quality of living and a high quality education. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Christina Kim to start us off.
Once again, thank you. Thank everyone for being here. So far, well, Ms. Simpson's already updated us about the list of schools that are eligible, but I guess in total all, if you want to put all the tickets in a bowl and put them all together, we have about 500 tickets, which means 500 students that are eligible to go to Seattle We Day this coming March 27th. As well, in addition to that, we also have 200 Federal Public School student volunteers to go pump up crowd cheerleaders for the We Day event in Seattle. So they're going to be dancing out there, having fun, leading the crowd, doing that kind of leadership, getting us such a good experience from that. Also, in addition to that, in these past months, we've had a We Act mentor and a We Act student ambassador workshops, in which we finally set up our district action campaign and adopting a village in Sierra Leone, and we also collaborated with a guest speaker from Free the Children to inspire the students in the district, to inspire teachers, to inspire really everyone to go make a positive change in the community, both globally and locally. Also, in addition to all the volunteers to be pump-up cheerleaders, we also have an opportunity for students to be youth reporters, going behind the scenes of the event, getting VIP passes, talking with the performers, getting the full experience and learning what goes behind We Day events, what goes behind setting up the whole We Day, and tweeting the information, blogging about it, saying news to everyone to get more students involved with this. And finally, at the end, we also have a youth summit coming up at Todd Beamer High School on Saturday, April 20th. So, at this youth summit, after We Day, events still go on. It's not an end after the celebration. So this is to inspire more students, more youth to get involved and help out their community. And now I introduce Jordan with our next slide.
Thank you again for inviting us here this evening. As Christina said, it's a district campaign this year that involves adopting a village in Sierra Leone. And it's the first year, as you all know, of this program. So while we as students are incredibly excited to get to be able to be hands-on and do all these wonderful things, we have to be patient enough to know that, you're not going to accomplish everything in 1 year. And that's why we're so excited about this Adopt a Village campaign, is that we can address the issues in the village that we feel passionate about, do as much as we can there, and then when we leave and the next group comes up, there's still going to be things they can help that village with. So it's really a multi-year process. It's not a one and done. It's not okay, here's a bunch of money, hope everything gets better. It's, we're going to grow alongside of you. We're going to make sure that you're going to be okay. And they've really organized this in a way that it's really easy for students to get involved and to understand exactly what's going on. They've got 5 core pillars of what's deemed to be a sustainable village, a sustainable community. And there's education, which they address through the construction of schools and the funding of teacher salaries. Health, in terms of medicine kits, and that kind of ties into the next point you see there, which is the clean water and sanitation, which is the number one cause of disease and a lot of, unfortunately, preventable deaths that occur over there, so we want to address that. There's alternative income and livelihood, which leads to more sustainable development of local economy, jobs, development of new industries so that not everybody is, dependent on one thing. And then there's agriculture and food security, which ties directly into that last point, because it's all about developing things, because the more advanced they are, the more opportunities they have, the more resources they have at their disposal to make sure that everything is going well.
So far, things have been going really well. Our students have been really active in events as well. So, for example, we have some sample schools up there and some of the events they have been doing to help get them on the road to WE Day and also help out global and local communities all over the world. So, for example, one would be Nautilus kindergarten through 8th grade, 65 middle school students involved in WE Day projects. And that's a big amount, considering like how many people in the school as well. And a recent highlight is that students have gotten involved into a book and school supply drive to help children in Africa where they don't have a lot of the tools they need to continue on as students, and a lot of the classrooms are crowded as well, so they need all the supplies they can get. Lakota Middle School has helped out a school over in Vancouver that got burned down recently in a fire. So they've been collecting school supplies, learning activities, kits, everything to help that school out. And as well, one of the classrooms that got $100 of scholarship money, they donated all that money to go and help that school. Sacagawea Middle School, the language art classes there have been going down to some feeder elementary schools, helping tutor the kids not only in English, but also in being active in their community, becoming leaders in the future, and getting that next step for community service. And students finally at Sahalee Middle School to help group to the organization Treehouse, which is a foster family community service organization, and they held a winter clothing drive the week before Christmas. And as a result, they got 1,000 clothing items for that place, so that's awesome. Okay. And here are some student voices about the projects they've done so far. So, an 8th grader, Cheyenne Corkum, stated that, "I like these projects because I see that even the little things I do can make a real difference." And another 8th grader, Kemi Akinwasuru, I hope I'm saying that right, said, "It makes me think more about doing things for others and encourages me to change the world." So you're getting statements from middle schoolers who are already thinking about participating in active global change, and that's a big thing.
So in addition to the middle schools and the high schools, we're also really excited that the academy programs throughout the district have really gotten on board with this, embraced the challenge that is here, and the Career Academy just recently collected over 1,300 items for Seattle's Union Gospel Mission. It's a really great organization, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And those items are going to go directly to kids in need that are being served through the Union Gospel Mission. Federal Way Public Academy, they're channeling all their efforts through the Community Service Club, and they're working on a clothing drive in conjunction with a fashion show to kind of showcase all of the donations, which is kind of cool, so everyone sees, hey, look at all the stuff we got. And that's going to go for the Friends of Youth organization, which is a great local group that works with homeless youth, teens on the street, things like that. The Internet Academy, 77 students, which I'm told is a large percentage of kids enrolled in the Internet Academy, which is awesome. They are collecting pennies. So far they've collected over 25,000 pennies, and they are halfway to their goal of 50,000, which is great. You can see here there's a quote. It's opening the students' eyes as to how much money is just sitting around, I have all these pennies on my dress, okay, there's $1 here, there's $1 there. It's really great that they're learning not only to value money, but to see, if I just put a little bit of my own resources towards this effort, how much it snowballs, how much it grows, how much really a group of people is capable of accomplishing.
So in addition to academies and elementary and middle schools in the area, the high schools have also been getting actively involved. Decatur High School, for instance, have held Fight Hunger and Quench Thirst Dance with thousands of pounds of food that were donated and tons of money is raised for Wells in Sierra Leone, which is the village that we're supporting in our Adopt a Village project for the district campaign. As well, a Miracle Minute at Jostens was to raise money for a local student who is one of the leadership students at Decatur, had an inoperable brain cancer. So more than $1,000 was raised in 1 minute to help that student. At Todd Beamer High School, we hosted a We Create Change campaign that rose a total of $475.34 to provide water for people in developing countries. So this is basically taking all these pennies, all this cash, all these leftover things on the drawer that people didn't really think about. They brought them all in. We put that all together, and we came up with over $400 to support people in Sierra Leone. And as well, to highlight 2 students from that group, Ken and Kaya, they kicked off the event at the Federal Way Rotary Club and collected $121 on one day just off of the presentation. So good kudos to them. At TJ, Thomas Jefferson High School, they held their first ever Agape Assembly. So students were educated on how love is, to accept other people just at face value, just for who they are, and to love first. And they use this to make a difference in people's lives. And the point of the assembly was to kind of avoid the traditional anti-bullying assembly, to come up with a new start, a new face to the whole idea of agape, and to allow students to see the power of positivity.
You know, it's really great from a student perspective to see all of your classmates, regardless of where they are, regardless of what they're involved in, just to see everybody, you know, recognize one vision and say, you know, we're going to do this, and to see the response that we've gotten. I know from a student perspective, it's really awesome to see that we're all working towards a common goal. And here you see another quote from a student at Todd Beamer, and that it kind of elaborates on that point. You know, they put together these events and they say, okay, we're going to do this, but the magnitude of the event and the cause that they're involved with doesn't really hit them until they show up. You know, the We Scare Hunger in October on Halloween, the change drive they just recently had. To see the participation you can get of people just believing in the same thing is truly incredible. And before I step away from the microphone, I'd just like to thank the district for all your support, the resources, the commitment you've given to us, and the opportunities we've been provided. Just take this and run with it. It's really great, and it's something that we're all thankful for. So thank you.
In closing, we are really excited that we're going to be sending an estimate of over 700 students and staff mentors to the first ever in the U.S. We Day Seattle on March 27th. And we know for sure one of the stars that's going to be there is Mikhail Gorbachev. However, they have yet to reveal the other superstars that will be in attendance to not only inspire kids, you know, grades 6 through 12, but I have to say that it's very inspiring for the adults as well. And the doors open at 8 o'clock. The program runs from 9 to 2:30. It's at Key Arena. And district, we're going to be working together as a team to provide busing to and from Key Arena for our students. And we're just very, very excited about this and the momentum that will be continued for remaining years, because Free the Children, as I mentioned before in the fall, once they come to a city and state, they'll be staying with us for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Any questions or comments, board members? Questions, comments, board members?
Wow, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Having last year heard about something that's called We Day, and we knew it was something about going from me to we, but didn't really know what that was, and being able to experience it with a group of students who experienced it in Vancouver for the first time, and then to see where you are today as a group of students is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And the power that it shows that you have as leaders is also quite incredible. So wow.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
No, I'm thrilled, Jordan. You said thank you to the district. I've just even being part of the We Scare Hunger, and just I want to thank you and the other students that are in this room and not even here tonight, but there's just the leadership and the ownership of this, and just the stats you're talking about tonight. I see that snowball, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and that momentum is gaining. And I'm excited for the traditions that are going to get started in this district and the focus globally that's going to take place. And you touched on it too in your presentation about how We the Children, how they have such a great process in helping out these villages. And I've been in those several countries, and where sometimes you can just throw money at a cause and you don't do it right, and it doesn't bring the right results. But we're partnering with people that get that, and they understand how the water and the education, all the health care and all those come together. And so it's not just exciting just to be what we're doing here, but to see actual change happening, not only locally, but also globally. So well done, and I'm thrilled for what's coming up with this event and all the stories that have come about from it. So thank you for coming and presenting tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent New?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Shaun Simpson for the leadership that you've done with this WE work and your relationship that you've established with Free the Children. When we first started talking about this thing, we had no idea where it was going to go. And we really have no idea where it's going to go ultimately. But we had one rule between us, and that was don't get in the kids' way. And to turn this over to our students and to watch them go and watch them grow. And I want to thank you two and all of your teammates, and how much I want to thank you for the work you've done, the way that you've spread the leadership and given your classmates and kids throughout the district opportunities with this Free the Children work. As a father, my two oldest are involved, and the conversations that we're having at home are unbelievable. And to hear you guys talk about what's going on around the district, your presentation tonight, it's kind of hard to fight back some tears because of what you guys are doing and what you're learning in the process. And now we have 700 students going to this first ever United States version of We Day Seattle. And the thing I want to remind the folks in the audience and people watching at home is this doesn't cost our students to attend this event. They earn their way in. And so to be sending 700 students from Federal Way who have earned their way in because of their contributions locally and globally is an unbelievable testament to who we are as a community and who our kids are. So I'm proud of you. Can't wait to see you there on the 27th. And thank you for the work that you've done in getting us off the ground in this initiative. And as Shaun said, the years to come with our work with Free the Children.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next we will have Assistant Superintendent Carol Matsui giving us an early learning update.
Good evening, school board members, Superintendent New, Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson, and members of the audience. I have two reasons for being in front of you this evening. One is to recognize the powerful team that's called Early Learning and to recognize their efforts, and to introduce you to Cindy Jacobly, really the heart and soul of the team. And I want to add a third part. I also want to thank Publicly Director Claire Wilson for her partnership and leadership and support in the early learning cause. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Cindy Jacobly, who will also introduce the team and start our presentation.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent New, Deputy Superintendent Matsui, and Davidson, and audience. As Carol said, my name is Cindy Jacobly, and I have the privilege of being the principal at Camelot Elementary School and the privilege of working with this amazing team. I'd like to quickly introduce them, and I'll recognize them again at the end. We have Dawn McCaffrey, Holly Jersey, Krista Fryer, and Sharon Cryan. I almost called you Eileen. I do that all the time. And Chuck Nickram. And they are members of our Early Learning Core team. And it is indeed my pleasure and privilege this evening to talk with you about the Federal Way Early Learning Initiative. So what is preschool through third grade education? We know that preschool education really begins at birth. And that those preschool years are a bridge into our public school system. And so the goal of a pre-3 education system is that we integrate and align the programs and policies and procedures with those of our early learning grades, kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, so that our children's learning experiences and indeed their families' experiences are positive and seamless as they enter that system. So why? Why do we have this initiative? Why are we focusing on early learning? We know, and we've known for a very long time, that the first 8 years of our lives set each of us, and indeed our children, on a path to success. Those years are really critical and a sensitive time in development cognitively, socially, emotionally, and my big favorite, communicatively, so how we learn how to speak and listen and all those communication skills. We also know that at a federal and a state level that many initiatives such as Thrive by Five, WaKids, the Roadmap Project place emphasis on standards-based education or Common Core standards. And that purpose is to enable children to learn to interact in a positive and constructive way with their peers and other adults so that they can establish those early patterns and routines of engagement with other people, which will result in a successful transition into school and a learning experience. You know that we have recently learned that research conducted by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation states that over 50% of our children entering school systems don't have early learning or preschool experiences. And to me, the significance of that connects to the research that we know about high-quality pre-K programs and that tremendous impact that they have on the emotional and cognitive development of our children. Some of the guiding principles that we have used in this last year and a half to guide our work are that children and parents and families are the core and really central to a child's social, physical, and cognitive development. Also, children's overall development is what matters most. And that school readiness is really very multidimensional and about the whole child and not simply a measure of characteristics, skills, and behaviors. It's not just a checklist. It's really about the whole child. So early learning in the Federal Way public school system. Currently, we have pre-K programs such as Head Start, ECAP, and our early learning preschools that serve almost 700 children, 677 as of today, and 60 all-day K programs and 22 half-day kindergarten programs, serving 1,636 children. The Early Learning Core Team was established about a year and a half ago and is comprised of all of these members. And its purpose has been to define a shared vision and direction to build connections with our families and our early care providers to improve student success. And I want to highlight that those early care providers really do include family, friends, and neighbors because quite often those are the early care providers for our children entering school. Our second purpose was to develop a framework that could be implemented in all elementary schools in Federal Way to build partnerships with those early care providers, including those families and preschools. And finally, to coordinate processes and procedures that result in a successful transition for our children and their families into the local school. So we've engaged in a number of activities in the last year and a half. Again, one being to establish the Early Learning Core Team. We did draft a 3-year plan for early learning in the Federal Way Public Schools. And we meet monthly to guide our work and to plan our initiatives. We also have worked and coordinated with our SOAR grants at 3 of our elementary sites. Those are Silver Lake, Olympic View, and Camelot Elementary. And SOAR is a coalition that works together to promote healthy development of children and families in King County and includes work with our early care providers. We've done work with the WaKids. We've developed and adopted preschool power standards and learning targets. We have also set up an early learning fair. Our first one was last year. Our second one is coming up this spring, and I'll share a little bit more with you about that in a moment. We also have adjunct membership on the Child Care Aware Board. We've implemented teaching strategies using GOLD at the WaKids sites and all of our Federal Way preschool sites. We have also collaborated with PSESD on a preschool through 3rd grade math grant. And we will be attending just tomorrow, this week actually, the WERA conference at pre-K symposium. We're looking really forward to that. Finally, we have also supported pre-K camps at half of our elementary schools and participated in early learning state guideline revisions. I also want to share that this year we were fortunate as a result of our connection with the PSESD and the state to have one of our school sites, and that would be Olympic View, participating in a United Way Boeing 3-year grant that takes the WAKids data, analyzes those results and where those kids are coming from, their families are in their neighborhoods, and targets some goals to work with families in such initiatives as learning center times, as well as family and evening events, in order to further prepare our children to enter the school system. We would like to highlight 3 of our major initiatives, one being the WAKids. It's at 6 elementary sites, Olympic View, Sunnycrest, Wildwood, Mirror Lake, Lake Grove, and Mark Twain. The 3 primary goals of this initiative are family connections, whole child assessment using the GOLD assessment, which also outlines teaching strategies to promote learning, and early learning collaboration between the kindergarten teachers and those early learning professionals that have worked with students previously. The Early Learning Fair, we've been able to set up merit training for the early learning providers. That's very similar to kind of clock hours that our teachers access for continuing education. We also welcome families and new students to our system. We provide opportunities for young children and pre-K students to participate in activities that will support their readiness. And it's allowed us to build some further connections with our community resources and connect our families to resources in the Federal Way community. Through the partnership with Federal Way, as well as our Family Partnership Office in Treese Moore, we were able to provide our parents with take-home kits with activities and parenting tips for readiness around math and reading instruction. And this year we will be able to expand that to our providers. The Gates Foundation P3 grant has been an awesome opportunity for us this year with the 4 elementary schools and our ECAP and Head Start programs. We partnered with PSESD, including Linda Philly-Bentler and Linda Myers, who I forgot to introduce. Hi, Linda. We have had 2 full days, or we will by the end of March, of professional development, working with our Common Core mathematical practices. And part of my favorite part of this is the opportunity for our teachers to go to school sites and observe each other and spend time after debriefing on what they see kids doing and how they observe students describing their learning around mathematical practices. We will have an opportunity for ongoing professional development also around this grant through the PSESD. So our future, what are some of our goals in the future? We really want all of our children to be prepared to enter kindergarten and to have strong partnerships with our early care providers and our families in order to do that, in order that our students will be successful. So we would like to be able to increase our partnerships with the early care providers, including family, friends, and neighbors. We'd like to streamline our partnerships with PSESD and ECAP and Head Start at birth to 3 in order to strengthen our families' abilities to work with their children. We look forward to the day when we have all-day kindergarten for all of our children in all of our schools at all of our sites. We are hopeful for universal preschool opportunities for all of our children in Federal Way. And we are optimistic that this year we will be able to provide pre-K camps for all of our elementary sites in Federal Way. And we would like to expand the membership of our Early Learning Core team to include parents and early care providers. This is a slide that shows some at our P3 math grant workshop here this year. So in closing, I would really like to thank the board and the district for their commitment and focus to early learning and for providing me with the opportunity to work with our district in Puget Sound and OSPI and this amazing team standing to my left. I would like to recognize and thank Treese Moore for her advocacy and support of families and early learning. I would like to also recognize Carol Matsui for your leadership and guidance around early learning. Dawn McCaffrey and Holly Jersey, as members of the Early Learning Core team, and thanking you for your work alongside me and working with our families and our staff and your assistance in preparing this presentation tonight. Krista, Chuck, Sharon, Eileen, who can't be here tonight, Lindsay Butcher, who also worked with us on the math grant, and Linda Philly-Bettler for your countless hours working with us as a core team and in preparing for the math grant. Just thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I would like to invite each of you to come to our March 23rd Early Learning Fair at Silver Lake Elementary. I will be sending you additional information with the specifics and the time and the particulars. We would love to see you there. And finally, in closing, we have a packet for you that includes the slide presentation and additional details and further information around early learning in the Federal Way Public School System. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments?
Questions, comments, board members? Superintendent?
I would be remiss. I'm so proud when I looked at the PowerPoint to see kind of looking up and looking out and thinking about who's involved in our community and who's involved in our neighborhoods and where our children come from. So I just want to thank you publicly for all the work you've done and the fact that the definition of early learning is connecting two systems that have really not been connected before. One system that's quite informal and quite fragmented, if you will, and providing incredible services for young children, and another system that's quite institutionalized and been there for a long time, and the two are now meeting. And it's just awesome because there's strength in each of those systems as they come together. And the only other thing I would say is have been having lots of conversation related to young parents in the district and young parents with children, and hope in your conversations and in your future thinking that you might consider how we would include those young families. And by those families, I'm talking high school students who may have children of their own and who we would like to be able to impact both of their lives. So, and I know there's great interest for that too. So I just want to thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Carol, just one comment I'd like to make. I'm glad that you recognize that the children's parents and families are the central piece of these students learning. With my 5 kids, I can tell you that 4 of them didn't have any pre-K programs. And the one that did, she wouldn't talk. Once she got into a pre-K program, I could have swore they vaccinated her with a phonograph needle, because 20 years later, she still hasn't shut up. But it opened up a whole new world to her, because she had that opportunity. And sometimes that's all it takes to get kids started in the right direction. So thank you.
One last thing, just for me, I just want to say thank you to all of you for this work. I know in our society, a lot of times we celebrate the end and we forget the beginning and the work that's there. And in our, really in Olympia and all that stuff, a lot of times the focus gets put on our, what's going on in high school and college and on. But we know this is really where the work's at, And so thank you for digging in and working hard. My daughter Hannah is preschool right now, going to be a kindergartner here in the fall. And, it was that speech development, all that kind of stuff came into play, with preschool, and it's been great. So I appreciate the work you're doing, and let's keep making it better. And I appreciate the focus, too, on parents and families and really making that first impression of what parents' experiences from the Federal Way School District, making it positive and something that we just build on as they continue through the different grades. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Superintendent.
I just wanted to watch you guys start to walk out and turn around again. I want to thank you, first of all, for all of you being here tonight. And Cindy, thank you for the presentation. Carol and Cindy, we've talked about this for the last couple of years, the emphasis, the focus on early learning that we're placing in this district. That was an amazing presentation. It's the first time I've seen it. And really, the depth and breadth of the work is really, really impressive. So thank you so much for the work that all of you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have our security update from Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson.
Good evening, Vice President Griffin, members of the board, Mr. New. I'm not going to make him talk, but I do have our head of security, David Remen, here, who also doubles as a photographer, as you know, in some events as well. He's a multi-talented man. I'm here tonight to talk about school security, school safety, and I thank President Moore, all of you, all as members of the board, and Mr. New, for continuing to keep our safety of our students, staff members, parents, and patrons our highest priority. As President Moore pointed out in his recent message on school safety, we are doing the following. Our security department, under the direction of Dave Remham, includes a campus security officer at each of our 7 middle schools, 3 patrol officers during the day, an officer on evening shift, and a weekend patrol officer. Federal Way, Beamer, Decatur, Jefferson, and Truman each have fully commissioned Federal Way Police Department officers serving as school resource officers. They also have Lieutenant Shupp, who is in charge of that group and focuses, although that's not her exclusive job, she considers it as the police department her most important job by far in all that she does. We have their Safe Schools tip line. We have an emphasis on harassment, intimidation, and bullying at all schools, helping students understand. And there was a great article in the Mirror this week about an event that happened at Federal Way High School, and talking about that, because that's the kind of thing that helps prevent further kinds of violent things happening with kids. Each school has an all-hazard plan which includes responses to intruders as well as internal and external lockdowns. These plans include drills for fires, earthquakes, and lockdowns for external and internal threats. Dave is currently doing safety audits of each of our schools. He's developed a list from an extensive, how many items did that have, Dave, originally?
Originally about 120.
About 120. He's boiled it down to much more manageable, kind of focused list that he's going through. He's completed the audits at 23 elementary K-8 schools that we have. He's now working on the secondary schools. And once that's completed, Federal Way PD, school security, and each principal will be working together on the plans that prioritize needs and address the issues that are identified in the audits. In addition, Federal Way Police Department last week made a presentation to a number of Federal Way school administrators, representatives of employee groups, and some of our ESC personnel about how to respond to violent intruders. We will continue to work with the police on improving our response because things have changed over time. The police and others are learning from the terrible, unfortunate things that are happening out there in schools and in other places, how we can all be safer. We're working on a camera plan, thank you voters again, which includes additional cameras at schools where needed, replacing digital video recorders with network video recorders, not that I could explain the difference, making the entire system digital, and connecting the entire system to the City of Federal Way's Safe City system. And I think this is one of the most important things we do, we continuously stress the vigilance of staff members, students, and the communities surrounding our schools, because frankly, being aware is probably the best thing you can do for yourself. That's when you're walking to your car, it's when you're at work, it's when you're at the mall, wherever it is. Paying attention to what's going on around you is a huge, important thing that we continue to teach our children. Finally, I want to stress the support we have from all the police departments with whom we work, including Kent, Des Moines, Auburn, and King County, as we, as you know, cover many jurisdictions in this district. We also have a great relationship with South King Fire, and as I've told you before, I serve with South King Fire, Federal Way PD, City of Federal Way on the Emergency Operations Center group, paying attention to all kinds of things going on in our region and working together. However, I can't overemphasize the wonderful relationship we have with Federal Way PD. It is astounding, and Mr. New talked about this last week with the chief there and other officers from Federal Way PD, how important that relationship is and continues to be. I rest easier every night knowing they are in our corner. So, thank you. Do you have any questions?
Any questions or comments, board members? I actually would like to say I appreciate hearing that there are safety audits happening at each of our individual schools. I would like to ask how that information is, how are we being transparent with our parents and guardians and students around the work we're doing in our schools with safety, each individual school around safety.
And I think that will occur as we work with those teams once we've done the audits. And we will want to communicate very clearly. Now, obviously, we're not going to communicate some of the weaknesses that we find, frankly, because it unfortunately gives the bad guys information that they can use. But we certainly can talk about things in general, and I will be expecting that each principal addresses their school community with what's happening, what we're able to do, even what we're not able to do, because as you know, some of the things can have tremendous cost, and you have to prioritize and decide what makes the most sense to be the safest. I think we've all decided, and I speak here for Mr. New, that we did 10-foot fences around our schools with a single gate would, quite frankly, be safer. I don't believe any of us want to work or send our children to that kind of place, because it doesn't help the future of teaching people how to deal with these things and reducing violence. And so that, I think those are those pieces we'll be talking about at each school. And again, that would be something I would assume or would expect that each principal will be sharing with their communities once we're to that stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, we have one more update, and that is our legislative update from Director Varney.
Yes, actually, there are a lot of things going on down in Olympia. I know one thing that doesn't impact schools directly, transportation package was presented. However, that could be up to and including a 10-cent per gallon increase in the gas tax. So although it may not directly affect education, it'll directly affect our expenses. And many of the bills that have made it out of the respective committees or are sitting in the House rules, for example, community service graduation requirement, requiring all kids to do a certain number of community service hours. That's one that's still there. Requiring CPR as a graduation requirement is in the works. Requiring parent-school meetings to discuss whether a student has passed the third grade MSP test. Of course, all of these bills come with no additional funding. Nothing in the bill to say, oh, and here's the funding for that. Requiring schools to adopt the new certified instructional staff assignment policy. Well, there's a lot of things in there changing the Common Core to the Common Core standards, slowly taking out the end of course exams and replace them with the comprehensive English and language. Of course, again, no new funding. We don't know what the funding is going to be. We do know that there is and I can bring this back as an official resolution if the board would like. WASDA has put out the resolution urging the state of Washington to address the K-12 funding. I know we have addressed it multiple times here at this dais here, and in many discussions we've had with our legislators, that we believe that they should follow the McCleary decision in fully funding education programs. If you are interested in signing on to the resolution, we can do that at the work study. They would like to have it by the 11th of March. I did not put it in a resolution form, but if you would like to do that, I can have that processed, and we can do that at our work study. But I think just as we have gone over and over again, reminding our legislators that we expect them not only to follow the McCleary decision, to follow the state constitutional mandate, which says to fully and amply fund education as their priority. There are a lot of other bills that didn't make it out of house, but that doesn't mean they're dead. They're not dead until the budgeting package is put together. They could always add them. If there are specific bills you would like me to follow, let me know, and I will track them down, find out where they are. The only other thing that I would add when it comes to the bills, fiscal bills need to be cleared by April 3rd. And then, of course, our revenue forecast is coming from both the Senate and the House after the revenue forecast in March. And Jay Inslee said he's not going to change his budget. He's going to give you a list of his priorities, but he's not going to give us a new governor's budget. So we'll see how this all plays out in the next month or so.
Thank you. I know several of us have been going down to Olympia to speak on behalf of House Bill 1642, which moves academic acceleration outside of just federal way,
To all
being
schools.
courageous to all schools, having the same courage on behalf of students across the state. And so definitely would like to continue to hear updates on where that's going.
All right.
Superintendent, do you have anything to share about that bill?
Just quickly add that Director Griffin and I happened to be at a meeting today in Olympia. Excellent Schools Now had a luncheon. I guess it's an annual luncheon, and the focus was funding and accountability, as well as our work in closing the gaps related to academic acceleration. And then we both moved over into the House to make contact with representatives, and just the intensity of the session being in full swing is, it's obvious that everybody has an ask down there for the representatives, but we were there really to help shape the academic acceleration bill. The Senate has moved it out of committee into Senate Ways and Means, so they're looking at the budget piece. We've broken it down to where the implementation of academic acceleration costs $70 per pupil in federal way, and about $45 per pupil every year to maintain it. And so our position on it is you fund McCleary fully, and we can proceed with bills like this. The things that you hear down there is that this is a threat to local control or the funding. The reality is the academic acceleration is about doing what's right for all kids. It's about breaking down those institutional barriers of selecting and sorting, elitism and racism. And the fact that we've taken that step here has gained the companion bills in the House and Senate. And it's also moving, I guess it's moving out of the House, but with an amendment to make it optional. And I talked to Representative Pettigrew today to voice my displeasure in making it optional. I don't think that making it optional will move the bill. It may move the bill, but it won't implement a bill that with the intentions of reaching kids that are traditionally underserved and underrepresented, don't have access to the programs of rigor.
And they do that because the full funding they were trying to implement, they keep putting it off until 2018 is when they're supposed to have it done. And this way, if they make it an option, then they don't have to fund it. So.
The other legislation would be House Bill 1723, which is the early start bill that's out on, and it's Ruth Kagi and the early learning committee, excuse me. And it does come with funding, and it is about Birth to 5 services, and it is about thinking about our youngest kids, which would also support the conversation that was had earlier this evening about early learning and the opportunity to increase not only access and services to young children, but increase dollars to support those services. So I know that I testified, and it was great to have on one side of the hallway early learning and on the other side academic acceleration. Both of those are dealing with the issue of equity and the opportunity gap on both ends of our educational spectrum. It's incredibly important, so that would be another bill to keep your eye on.
All right, we'll do it.
All right, thank you very much. We will move into public comment. And I'm going to start this evening off with Travis Mango. Did I say your last name right?
Yeah, thanks, Mango.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you for having me tonight. Tonight I just kind of wanted to share a little bit about an exciting time in women's athletics in Washington State and the importance that Federal Way High School is in developing tradition within this community and how important it is for us to build a building where the legacy of excellence can continue. Since 2008, girls wrestling has really exploded at Federal Way High School. Over the past 5 years, 80 girls have come through the program, and during this time, the girls program has placed within the top 10 at the state tournament 3 times. We've sent 22 girls to state, 14 of whom have placed. These young ladies and others who have come through the program truly embody what the student athletes at Federal Way High School are about. They take an active interest in their community, in their academics, as well as their futures. This season was the most successful of all the teams that I've coached so far in my time at Federal Way High School. This year, the girls wrestling team went 7-0, and we also won the All-SBSL Girls Tournament, won the inaugural All-Girls SBSL Duals Championship, as well as winning the sub-regional and regional title. In addition to all of this, I had the honor of being named the Regional Girls Coach of the Year. In light of these accomplishments, I also want to recognize the importance that the boys team has played in the success and development of the girls program at Federal Way High School. Before I took over the program, only 12 boys were on the roster at the end of that season. Since that time, I've had upwards of 50 boys come out for the team every year, which has led to a team of boys and girls of 70-plus kids in the last 3 years alone. During this time, the result of this is that these numbers have allowed for more kids to get off the streets, more kids to be active, and to have more mentors involved in their lives. However, currently we've outgrown our current facility. While we have made it work, we hope that the new Federal Way High School will allow us to continue to increase our numbers and provide more kids the opportunity to be active in after-school activities. As we plan for the future and development of the new Federal Way High School building, I would like to thank the community of Federal Way and the voters for investing in our students' futures by passing the levy this last fall. With this levy, I hope that we construct a facility where our children's futures grow and develop with the demands of tomorrow. Not only should this include space for our academic programs, but also spaces for our athletics and arts programs to develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Scott Henderson.
Good evening, Superintendent New and School Board, Board of Directors. Thank you, Coach Mango, an awesome coach, and I strongly support what he just said. The reason why I'm here is that I was here a couple of weeks ago, and I had presented some concerns with regards to what I felt were some disproportionate focus on physical education amongst different schools within our school district. I had mentioned to this board that I had an idea to have a forum, a roundtable forum with individuals within the school district, ADs, PE teachers, and that sort of thing to talk about how we could fix some of those problems. Everyone, after I spoke on the board, mentioned that they thought that was a good idea and at least conceptually endorsed what I was trying to say and asked for me to come back and give you some progress, so that's what I'm doing here today. I met with Marie Verhar and Vince Blauser the next day. I showed up at their offices. I explained to them, I think Marie was here, Marie and Vince were here, and they heard me talk. I explained to them what I was trying to accomplish. It was Marie, I, and Vince in a room with a closed door. It was explained to me that they could not possibly support my idea or my concept because the school district is very, very specific too that, in fact, that they already hosted such meetings and that there were some specific challenges that were described as lack of attendance and political infighting and politics, and nothing was accomplished. I was then invited to attend the meeting. Marie and Vince and I talked about my history with regards to fundraising. I've helped raise $500,000 for the Federal Way National Little League. I've filled out some grants successfully, and I was invited to be involved in the process. and attend meetings. And a couple of days later, I received an invite. On that email distribution list, there was a total of five individuals. I responded by paraphrasing exactly what was discussed at the meeting and suggested in the email that I, as a taxpayer and a citizen, not an employee of the district, that I encourage other folks, EDs, PE teachers, people directly involved, paid with my tax dollars to affect these changes and who should be at these meetings to attend. I reached out to those individuals, explained the plight that was explained to me by Marie and Vince, and asked them to attend these meetings. I was told summarily to uninvite those individuals, that the statements were made out of context, and there is no meeting, and nothing to my knowledge is being accomplished. That's my progress report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we will have Jamie Tuff.
Hi, I'm Jamie Tuff, and I'm an administrative intern at Federal Way High School, and I'm also the head gymnastics coach. I'm looking forward to earning my principal certification in the next few months. I want to take a few minutes to talk about a gymnast of mine. She actually had to leave. She's a cheerleader. That's her first love, so she has cheer practice, so she took off. But her name is Tia Thomas. She is a sophomore at Federal Way High School, and this year she took second in state on the floor exercise. She scored a 9.625, which is really, really good. In addition to that, she placed third in state at diving this year. So this is an amazing achievement because she's not a club diver or a club gymnast. So that's unheard of. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard that. So it's phenomenal. Not only is she an incredibly hardworking, talented, very coachable young lady, she has a 4.0 GPA, and she is here at Federal Way High School on choice. So we are very lucky to have her. It's an honor to coach Tia Thomas, so I wanted to talk about that. I also wanted to say Travis Mango is a fantastic wrestling coach, and I believe you were the women's coach of the year, girls coach of the year too? Yeah. Awesome. You get a lot out of your girls. It's fantastic. So while I'm here, I want to take this opportunity to thank you all, Superintendent New, the school board, Lisa Griebel, and the Federal Way community for your leadership and support of the capital levy to rebuild Federal Way High School. So in just a few short years, we are hoping to be able to have the HISP, the Cambridge exams, and the end of course assessments without constantly worrying the fire alarm is going to malfunction. So we're excited about that. In addition to supporting student learning, we have an opportunity. Federal Way High School is the flagship school, and we host a number of community events there, most of which are athletics. There's about 100 girls competing in high school gymnastics within our district alone. Gymnastics is a Title IX superstar. Our successes are not without our challenges. Every time we set up for a gymnastics meet, we take about an hour and a half to tear down all of this big heavy equipment, move it into the main gym, and reset it back up. Then we compete for 3 to 4 hours, tear it all back down, and move it all back into the gymnastics gym. So that's one of our biggest challenges. The vault is about 500 pounds, and we have these young girls moving it. It's tough on them. So in our future, I am hoping that we can build a gym that will increase efficiency and have dedicated auxiliary gyms with bleachers that can seat a few hundred of our fans and plenty of storage for all of the equipment that is currently under a big tarp right now in our gym. So then our gymnasts would be able to compete and go home just like every other athlete in every other sport. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. We've always been about supporting our kids, and I'm really proud to be a part of that. Thanks.
Okay, next we will have superintendent comments.
Thank you, Madam Vice President and directors. I've really made most of my comments earlier as we talked about the legislative updates and We Day. I did want to, of course, congratulate our wrestlers and the TJ Bull and B students. What a great way to start a board meeting. And I also want to thank Mark Davidson and Dave Remen for the work that you have done, continue to do on security measures. Once again, the relationship that we have with the Federal Way Police Department is phenomenal, and we will continue and always will continue to work on ways to enhance our security practices. So with that, that's it for me tonight.
Thank you. Okay, we will have school board comments, and I'll start to my right. Director Peterson.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It was just great hearing just the different things develop in our district. Still thrilled about We Day coming up and just the participation there. Coach Mango, just that's awesome what your ladies are doing and what you're investing in our students. Thank you so much. Jamie, thank you as well for we were out there on the street corner waving signs for our levy and everything, and just the work you're doing there at Federal Way High School as well. Appreciate that. Mr. Henderson, you came and reported back tonight. Two things I just want to say. One is I know that we have people within our district that know how to handle that, are overseeing our physical education program, and I would follow their lead on how they would want you to interact with them. And two, I just want to say that as a board, I know we did not commission you for whatever it was, so I don't want you to perceive maybe what was said last time as me basically saying, go for it and change the world. My last time what I was thanking you for was for your comments, coming and sharing, highlighting some of what your perspective is on how some changes that you'd like to see in Federal Way schools. So thank you for that and for coming back tonight and sharing again. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Director Wilson.
I just wanted to say a couple things. I have had an opportunity this last month to go visiting a bit, and I spent the evening at the Taft Science Exhibitions on Valentine's evening. I don't know what all of you were doing on Valentine's night, but I was learning about the creation of a wireless hand glove remote for inline skates that one of the students at Taft had done in his science exhibition, clear to the development of biofuels, and I'll let you guess from what. So the entire evening was incredible, thoughtful, insightful, with great depth and rigor, thinking about science and math and the exhibitions. And it was quite an amazing evening with folks that were from both the Technology Access Foundation office and as well as folks from the other fields to actually judge and speak with students to talk to them about what they knew about their projects. So it was quite amazing. I also had a chance to attend the community forum on domestic violence that was held recently at Thomas Jefferson in the Little Theater that was sponsored by Pete Von Rockfire. And the whole idea that DV is everyone's concern and as we think about violence, we need to think about violence not only within our schools, but we need to think about violence that happens within our community and in our homes, and that no one is immune. And as we think about whole children and whole families, we cannot ignore that it is something that exists in our community. I've had some conversation again around teen parents in our district. I'm concerned about what might be available for them related to supports and services so they also will be able to follow their career path and their educational success and that of their children as well. And so I'm interested in having some ongoing conversations and finding out a little bit more about that. And we'll also say so proud and so excited of the youth leadership in this district that every month appears here to share their stories and to share about not only what they've done for themselves but for their community and also for the world globally. Travis, women's sports is a big deal to me. I was at WSU in 1974 when Title IX was first signed, and a friend of mine was one of the names on the list. So to have young women wrestle and to be where you are with that sport is utterly amazing. So I congratulate all of you and wish you the best as you continue. I think that's all I have to say.
Director Barney.
All right. Since you finished with wrestling, I'll just go on and congratulate all of the winners and the coaches for the amount of work that they have put through this year. Just a special note, if you hadn't heard, Kyle Gleed, who won his bout, actually knocked the kid out. He was ahead on points 4-3, and in making a move, somehow he ended up putting a foot into the kid's face, knocked him out, and the doctors ruled that he was unable to continue. So first time TKO in a wrestling match. I keep teasing him about it, but it's fun. And We Day celebration. I want to thank all the work that you kids have put forth in this. I mean, it's not something, as Superintendent New said, teachers, staff, get out of the way, let the kids do it, because they will. If you don't inhibit them, they will move forward, and they will just take this on as they have and move forward. I mean, just with the scare hunger, I mean, that was an amazing effort. And all the work that these kids are putting forth, I applaud all of them for the amount of work that they're doing. As I've had a chance to talk to folks about the middle school, high school planning nights, the only question I've had come up is with the middle school nights, for example, is that information available on the web where they can go to it? Because a lot of questions that they had, they couldn't get answered because they couldn't get to the school to ask their questions because there were too many people. So is it possible to have 2 nights of this, or make that all that information available in one spot on the website? So that's something that, if I could ask you to check into, appreciate that. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, board members. I really don't have anything tonight except for to thank everyone that came out and shared and presented. And I also am excited about We Day, and I am very, very excited about all the student accomplishments that we have in our school district, particularly our athletes and our academically successful. I mean, it's amazing to me to hear 4.0 in wrestling. Yeah, it's amazing to me to hear 4.0 and cheerleader and gymnast, and and so our kids just continue to prove that having a holistic approach to education is the right way to educate our youth. So thank you for sharing and reminding us of that. Next, we will move into budget planning with Assistant Superintendent Sally McLean.
Look at, I'm clearing the room. I thought that was Deputy Superintendent Davidson's job.
Well, actually, I believe that Deputy Superintendent Matsui cleared most of the room. When she got up there, you just cleared out the rest of it. That's it.
Good evening, Vice President Griffin, members of the board, Superintendent New, staff, students, parents, and community. It is my pleasure this evening to bring you an update, as we do every year during budget season. I try to bring a particular relevant topic to you and to our community to keep us all apprised about the progress or lack of progress that is occurring. Last meeting, I talked a bit about federal sequestration. This evening, while we've certainly had a robust legislative update from Director Barney and with Superintendent New's comments and Director Wilson's comments, I also want to kind of flesh that out in regards to budget. We'll have some local trends to talk about as we go through this budget development process, and obviously we'll cycle back to federal sequestration and Washington State Legislature more than once. This slide is a slide that many of you may be familiar with. In past years, we have, under the Washington State laws, have a governor's budget that gets released in December, and then we have a House budget and a Senate budget. So in past years, typically there have been 3 different budgets released every time a conversation or the legislature convenes, with a final state budget coming out as the product, typically about 11:59 the night the session adjourns. I've added some words to this. If you look at the far left-hand side, I wanted to clarify for people that this is what's considered a long session, or a 105-day session. It started on January 14th. They're scheduled to be done with their work on April 28th. Many of you will remember that we have had some extenuating economic circumstances over the last few sessions that have required legislative sessions that have gone long beyond the 105-day session or special sessions. At this point in time, Since they didn't start early, I don't know if that's indicative of whether or not we'll have a second special session at the end or if they'll be able to wrap up on time on April 28th. I think it's important also to note that when we're in a long session, when we're in a 105-day session, what the legislature is doing is talking about a biennial budget. So if you look at the right-hand portion of the slide, you'll see 2013-15. Our state adopts a 2-year budget, and then in the odd year, they come in and make adjustments to that final budget. So oftentimes, if you're reading things in the press, you'll read information that maybe seems financially different than what we're talking about here, and that's because school districts budget 1 year at a time. So legislatively, they're talking about a 2-year impact. We're talking about 1 year at a time. We know that there have been a number of changes within the structure of our leadership at in Olympia. We have former Governor Gregoire's budget that was released in December. At the time I put this slide together, I was unsure about whether or not Governor Inslee would be releasing his own budget. Actually, as of last Friday, in terms of the education portions of the budget, he offered a couple of bills that were specific to career and college planning, but left the former Governor Gregoire's budget pretty much alone in terms of education planning. Last year from the House, we saw the House Republicans release a budget as the minority party, in addition to the actual formal House budget, which comes out of House Ways and Means. This year we have within the Senate, the majority of the Senate is Democratic, with the minority being Republican. However, we've had a couple of elected senators who have realigned themselves from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. So you actually have the majority party being in the minority and the minority party being in the majority. And so at this point in time, we're not sure if that means we'll get 2 budgets out of the Senate or 1. In any case, I would imagine it's going to be a fun thing to observe. TVW will be my new channel of interest this session. As Director Barney mentioned, in this current legislative session, as in every legislative session, there are hundreds, in this case 180, different education bills that were introduced. We know not all of those will make it through final session, but it's still a lot of things to monitor. We did make it through the first cutoff, which was Friday, February 22nd, although any more, that hardly seems to be indicative of the actual results of a bill, because any bill can still be revived if it has a budgetary impact or is perceived to have a budgetary impact. The next revenue forecast is due out of the Forecast Council on March 20th. I would expect to see the Senate and House budgets released shortly after that. I would hope shortly after that. This year in the long session, you would expect to see the Senate budget first and the House budget following that. If you'll recall, they're scheduled to adjourn on April 28th, so depending on the actual content of the March forecast and where our elected officials are in developing their respective budgets, we may see those I'm hoping to see both of those by late March, but we may not actually see them until April. In the meantime, we're still planning. We start planning on a set of assumptions that we'll keep talking about. Obviously, for those of us in the K-12 community, we believe that the legislature's response to the McCleary decision should be a significant factor in their budget development. The question right now that we all have is, will it be? To talk a little bit about the McCleary lawsuit, and I borrowed some of this language from Dan Steele, who works for the Washington Association of School Administrators. But in the court case of McCleary versus the state, some of the courts, the Supreme Court's wording talks about the fact the state has consistently failed to provide the ample funding required by the Constitution. And therefore, the state must, 1, demonstrate steady progress under engrossed substitute House Bill 2261, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and 2, show real and measurable progress towards Article 9, towards fulfilling Article 9, Section 1 compliance by 2018. A couple other pieces in there. In gross substitute House Bill 2261, it defines the program changes that have been defined for public education in the state of Washington, and substitute House Bill 2776 defines the funding changes that are required. As a reminder, as our legislature convened, the Office of the Council of Forecast, the Forecast Council Office, had a state budget outlook for 2013-15, again, that biennial year, and the quote actually did use my favorite addition to a word, that the state had a $2 billion-ish gap without addressing McCleary. So the state, even though we continue to see some modest economic recovery signs, we still have a $2 billion gap predicted in the 13-15 biennial budget without addressing McCleary. Additionally, the voters of this state passed Initiative 1185 this last November, which requires a 2/3 vote in the House and the Senate for any potential revenue increases. So the 10-cent gas tax, for example, that has been proposed to potentially fully fund K-12 transportation would require a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate to obtain, which we all remember how hard it is to get a 60% supermajority for certain of our legislative actions. Getting a 66 2/3 vote is even more challenging. To give you a sense of where we all were, and this was a slide prepared by OSPI in May of 2010. Again, substitute House Bill 2776 was talking about the funding components for the program changes that were implemented in 2661. Those major changes included the expansion of full-day kindergarten until full-day kindergarten was an expectation for all kindergarten students, reducing K-3 class size, fully funding the concept of material supplies operations and operational costs, MSOC, and basic transportation. If you look at this column, the 2012-13 column, back in May 2010, there was an expectation that more funding, I know they're using the words must, but there was an expectation that more funding would begin in 2012-13. Of course, that was a significant year of reduction for us and for all school districts in the state. As we look at the biennial budget, 2013-14 and 14-15, you can see that the original planning was that this funding would continue to ramp up. I'll just hold out hope for beginning steps of implementation. And again, you can see where the state Supreme Court got the all of these concepts were supposed to be fully funded by the time we got to 2018. I am not expecting, as we look at the 13-14 budget, that we will see a lot of ramping up in terms of funding the McCleary decision. But you know me, I always like to start with low expectations and have those improve as we go through the budget cycle. In anticipation of Director Peterson's question tonight, well, I'm not a gambling woman. I will make some state budget predictions. Really not comfortable trying to predict what Congress is going to do, although March 1st is on Friday. So, you know, that crystal ball is getting a lot clearer. When I would think about what I would expect to see on April 28th or potentially before, is I would expect out of those 180 educational bills that approximately 20% of them will pass. That's pretty standard. And that some of those will require, if not all of them, will require either new activities on the part of school districts or a change in our current activities, and that probably most of those will come with insufficient or no funding to implement. I anticipate that we will actually see a restoration of the salary allocation reductions, which is good news. This is happy. This is good news. Because in order for that reduction to continue into the next biennium, the legislature would actually have to incorporate a reduction in the salary allocations again. So theoretically, it should expire on June 30th. If that happens, that eliminates our need to have discussions about furlough days, which is a good thing. And then, of course, going back to the other side, any other new funding. So if what we're hearing around McCleary sounds like if there is any other new funding, most likely it will come in a prescriptive manner. So if there is new funding, it could come as an expansion of all-day kindergarten, which we would be ecstatic about. Or any other new funding that's been proposed will come with strings rather than with flexibility. So that's what I believe I know about state budget as of today. Are there any questions or comments that I can address?
Questions or comments, board members?
Great job presenting. You already answered my questions.
Thank you, Director Peterson.
Anyone else? Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
All right, board members, I'd ask that you complete your assessment of this meeting. At this time, Chris Popovich, do we have any action items?
No, there's no open action items. But Director Barney, what did you ask about? Maybe two?
Yeah, it was just to make the information about the middle school opportunities from the transition nights and high schools available on the web, and I think that...
I got it. Yeah, it's not an action item. I'll follow up with Vince and Diane
Thank
Turner at the with communications and get that information posted on the web, and then we'll have a conversation about extending those to a second night.
All right, thank you. Superintendent, you have any closing comments?
Just a real quick thanks to Sally, and to remind the board that we do have a work study Tuesday, and it's the Sally Show. We're going to go deep dive on the budget situation on Tuesday night, March 5th. Thank you. That's
Perfect. With that, this meeting is adjourned.